For the past 12 years, this iconic Airstream has been my pride and joy. It is a 1962 vintage Airstream Trade Wind Land Yacht model. In my own quest for a vintage Airstream, I came to the decision that the Trade Wind was the perfect size for me. The pre-64 Trade Winds have that perfect iconic look that I was after. At 24 feet, single axle, it maintains the perfect look of what you think of when you think of a vintage Airstream, and it's not too small and it's not too big. This model comes with a dedicated sleeping area, a kitchen, and a bathroom. It also has a front area that transforms into either the primary or secondary bedroom. It's usually used as the kitchen nook as well as the remote office in your living room. I like to refer to this as the Lucy and Desi model. It's actually a twin model that was built in Ohio. She was manufactured back in 1962, and since I'm filming this in 2024, she's actually 62 years old this year, so I think that's kind of special. 1962 was a significant year for Airstream. It was the 30th anniversary. It was also tragically the year that the visionary and founder of Airstream, Wally Byam, passed away in July 1962. For me, this was just very, very special because it really represented Wally at his peak. When I think of vintage Airstreams, this is what I think of. I think of a single axle, iconic, smaller trailer that you can pull into a national park that's just iconic. The older ones, the pre-64, they have a different look, and that's because the end caps have more segments, so there's more rivets. It has much more of an Art Deco, atomic age look. And it's one of those things you wouldn't know unless they were side by side. But it's one of those things I like to tell the story that a long time ago when I was a kid, I really wanted a Jeep. Back in the day, I was in radio, and I had a dealer trade for a Jeep. Man, I got it home and I was like, oh, I was so excited. And then I looked at it and I was like, what's wrong with this Jeep? It doesn't look like a Jeep. It doesn't have round headlights. And I was like, oh my God, they changed literally they changed the model the year that I got mine. And it bothered me so much. I only kept that. I sold it with 389 miles on it. I went back and traded it back in. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's really the same with these iconic Airstreams. You have to really know what you're looking for. And in this case, I was fortunate because I'm a pilot. I was able to go to a lot of shows. Over the years, I had just been in love with these things. And I'm also an aviation buff. Like I mentioned, I'm a pilot, and I had built a couple of airplanes. And so the whole Airstream, it was familiar to me for a lot of reasons. As I looked at them, I wanted a very specific look. And so I realized what the difference was. And what happened after 1964, really after 1963, starting with the 64 models, they lost segments on the end cap. And so the end caps, the segments are much wider. And so you lose rows of rivets. And what that does is you actually lose a little bit of the handcrafted look that they're so famous for. So why did they make this change? They did it really just so they could get more units out the door per day. It had nothing to do with trying to make them look better. It had everything to do with efficiency. And that's not why you buy one of these iconic Airstreams. You buy it so that it's the ultimate cool, that it has the ultimate cool factor. And if you want to do that, you need to look at 63 and older trailers. Basically from 57 to 63, the end caps have a total of 10 panels. That's 3 on the bottom, that's 2 on each side, 1 under the window, and then 7 across the top. Beginning with the 1964 model, they still have the 3 panels on the bottom, but they only have 5 across the top. They started to manufacture differently to save cost, to make more per day, and you lose 2 of those critically important segments. And that might not sound like a lot, but you lose 2 upper segments, and trust me, it makes a huge issue in the way they look. Now, when you go pre-57, they actually have 13 segments, and those are very, very cool. And honestly, some of those are some of my favorite. The challenge with that is I also wanted mine to be original because it was super important for me to have a piece of Americana that was as original as possible, that I could restore, keep it camp ready, and just make it a survivor, bring all the systems and all the mechanicals up to date. But at the same time, I didn't want to gut it and make it a Pinterest cool thing. I would just go buy a new one if I was going to do that, frankly, or get my Sprinter. Like I've got a Sprinter van, so it's the same thing. I wanted this to be pure. I wanted it to be original, and so it took me a long time to find one that fit that bill. What I discovered in the process of searching for these is basically it was going to be really challenging to keep anything what I call a time capsule and be pure really 61. So I was really looking for probably a 61 to 63 model, and that really limited my search. But that was kind of where I ended up on my quest. Your quest might be different. One of the things that we absolutely had to change and could not keep original in every one of these vintage trailers, the front pressure tank always leaks. That leads to floor rot. So the tank has to go, the gacho has to go, and basically the subfloor has to go and be replaced in that area. It worked out great for us because we have the twin model, which has 2 single beds. And we actually wanted to have the front area open so that we could put down an air mattress at night, or so that we could have it as a flex space. And so for us, it worked out perfect. That was one concession that we had to make that's the one area that it's not a complete perfect time capsule. And in your case, you'll probably run into something similar, but I just wanted to throw that out there. You're always going to replace the axles, the brakes, the tires, the wheels, all those things, obviously, wiring, plumbing, those are all going to be givens. The goal is to keep it as original as possible, or at least that was my goal. And again, this is a 1962, 62 years old. It was the last year that Wally was alive. I think it's so special for that reason alone. There are a few other things that really changed also that make this special. The shell itself on these, it's called the bread loaf design, and that changed later on in the 60s. The way you can tell if it's a bread loaf model or not is look at the rear section compared to the front section. What you'll notice is the front section is vertical, straight up and down, and the rear section trails off a tad bit. And also after 63, the really famous, highly desirable door-in-door went away. Like after Wally died, I guess they decided that it was too much of a pain to make that. And they lost a little bit of the charm and a little bit of the function. And some of the beautiful hardwood cabinetry on the inside changed as well. You might notice that this one's designated as a land yacht. And so if you see land yacht in any of the vintage Airstreams, that's not a model. It's actually a feature. What that means specifically are 2 things. That means that the Airstream is self-contained, meaning that it has at least a blackwater tank for the toilet. And it also it's wired for both AC and DC power. That means that you can plug in and you've got power, or you can be off-grid and you can use a battery. That's all it means. One other thing that this specific trailer had that's rare is a directional police-style antenna that has a little compass on the inside, and you can turn it because everybody was using terrestrial antennas back then. And I actually still have that. I don't have that in the pictures because I have it in storage. And I'm not exactly sure why they called it a police-style directional antenna. That's just what they called it in the 62 catalog. There's one other thing that you might want to think about when you're looking at vintage trailers, and that's actually what's the difference in the trailers that were built in the California versus the Ohio plant. Well, for starters, you're always going to notice a black badge or black medallion that's going to be on the California trailers, and you're going to notice a silver oval-shaped football-looking medallion that's going to be on the Ohio trailers. That's not really the big difference. The bigger difference is actually the configuration. For example, in 1962, if I wanted a twin model like I did, what I call the Lucy Desi model, I had to get the Ohio trailer because back in 1962, California only built trade winds and doubles. There's one other thing that's noticeable between the California and Ohio trailers when you're looking at the vintage age. It's not always there, but sometimes there's a larger vent system next to the door on the California trailers. If you're dreaming about joining the Vintage Airstream family, I hope you found these insights helpful. Good luck on your quests, and always remember to enjoy the journey.